Hello fellow cultivators, welcome to my last build guide video for Tale of Immortal, and this video is not for new players, let's directly say it. So if you are a new player, you probably won't understand much if you are just looking at this video. Instead, please take a look at my general skill guide, which is more towards new players, that introduce a lot of basic knowledge, how skills work, and how do you learn a skill, upgrade skill, comprehend the skill, and what does, damage is calculated, and how does cooldown, which is CD stands for, and CDR stands for cooldown reduction, and how those things are calculated. And because those are more basic information, and please check out that video. And this video will be more focusing on the 12 different martial arts spiritual rules and how each of them works. And this video will only cover the most essential part instead of all the details. So if you want the details, please take a look at the 12 complete build guide videos. Warning, they are very long, and I know nobody has the patience to watch all of them. That's why this video comes. You can just take a look. I think it will take pretty short for each martial arts spiritual rules, and if you can click on a timestamp, you can jump to that one martial arts spiritual rule that you are more interested in once you have some basic knowledge about this game. So before we start, again, damage come from attack minus enemy defense divided by 30 divided by 30 plus enemy resistance multiplied by percentage damage modifiers. And that's why you want those damage modifiers and you want high attack to increase your damage. And cooldown, you want as short as cooldown as possible. So you want the basic cooldown to be short, and you always want sub-skill cooldown reduction, that flat sub-skill cooldown reduction from your basic skills. And then you want all the percentage cooldown CDR modifiers, and finally minus the conditional cooldown reduction modifiers, and this is how you can reach 0 CD. So now let's truly go to the 12 different martial arts. Here, let's start with Blade. Blade is a very simple. So you use your LMB, so every single infographic always start with LMB mostly. You use your Blade LMB to apply a buff or debuff to the buff to yourself, debuff to the enemy. In this case, we ignore all the buffs because all the Blade RMB, the better ones, are always with Blood Blade, which is a debuff. And then you can use those 3 type of RMBs to detonate the debuff Blood Blade and trigger Blood Slash. And as long as you're applying the debuff, this trigger Blood Slash can be there all the time. And this is how you make the most basic build work. And Blade is a very good example for that. And now going to a bit more deeper, once you come to the end game for Blade build, you should aim for 0 cooldown RMB, because all the 3 Blood Blade RMBs have the conditional cooldown reductions, which means if you have collected all 4 elements, including the 25% RMB CDR in Mastery, Mind Skill, and Blood Energy 3, 20% Wandering Cloud, which a set you can get at Reborn, and finally 3 special Dao that have 10% CDR. Then, with the minus 4 seconds conditional cooldown reduction, you got 0 cooldown RMB, which is one of the most strongest, powerful thing in the entire game. And that is your end game aim. And middle game, just use the Blood Slash. And also, Blade LMB have the life steal, which makes it quite useful for many other builds if you want HP recovery or to deal with certain situation in the game. And finally, usually when you use a Blade RMB, if you have 3 stacks of Blood Blade, it will reduce the cooldown reduction for LMB to make your LMB even faster. This is something you can aim for to make your Blood Slash triggers even faster. Now let's come to Spear. Spear, one of the most, let's say, misunderstood build in the entire game, because people do not understand how it works. So again, as you can see from this infographic, Spear is really centered around one thing, Dragon Rising RMB. So you need to use the 3 RMBs which called Dragon Rising. So Dragon Rising RMB have this thing called recharging points, and you can always use RMB 3 times in a row because the basic recharging point is 3, so that you can deal a lot of damage within a very short amount of time. Now, Spear Mastery is very important because that grants you +3 charging point, so that you can get 6 recharging points. And you can charge 6 times in a row and kill the enemy even faster. Now, this is just basically how it works. The thing is, Spear become much more powerful once you reach late or end game. So first of all, if you are using a dragon sect with the 5th level following dragon, so following bug 1, 2, 3, and then following dragon and dragon awaken, which will grant you blue dragon form, which once you have in the blue dragon form, your recharging is much faster. So you basically already get infinite recharge, so infinite RMB. And then once you reach 5th green following dragon and 5th level green scale pool, every time you use your RMB, you got 100% dodge. So as long as you are using RMB all the time, you are invincible. And also, once you reach Reborn, you can get Arcane Bird and Laser Feather, which allows you to have 50% chance to +1 recharging point every time you crit. And this is why Murderous Rise or Jiuchen's talent to increase your crit rate is really, really important for Spear build. And apart from those important ones, as you can see, Spear LMB in here, it is not that important, because what does it do? It applies Destruction, which is a debuff, so that your RMB hits harder. But it is good, but you can't swipe it out. And also, Spear Secret Menu will allows you to charge 30% faster with 6 stacks of Destruction, so again, debuff. So these two relate to debuff. And finally, a thing which is more useful in middle game is that Dragon Rising RMB can create Spear Shadows if you use Dragon Spear Formation Ultimate, which allows you, once you use this ultimate, all the Spear Shadow will be costed, and if you have those sub-skills in your Sutra and Guide, you can get HP and MP recovery in middle game. And the most basic and the most fancy and the most powerful, one of the most powerful thing in the entire game, sword build. And really, this is the developer's favorite, and also it is very, very powerful, and it's also a very good example that if you understood how build works, and if you do not understand how build works, how much difference it is. So without understood anything about the build work, what you do is just using sword LMB and sword RMB and then do some damage to the enemy. But how sword is supposed to be played is you use sword LMB to either apply bleed, which is a debuff to the enemy, or apply sword slash, which is the buff to yourself. If you use sword army that detonates the bleed, the debuff, each stack you detonate the bleed, it will reduce your motion skills cooldown. And same thing if you use spear army with 8 stacks of sword slash, the buff, it will also reduce your motion skill cooldown. And this allows you any motion skill to have almost 0 cooldown. And now, once you use a motion skill, with Sword Divine Power, you reduce the cooldown, 6-second cooldown of your RMB, which means both your RMB and your motion skill have 0 seconds cooldown. You just use both of them one by one all the time. Press down your right mouse button and press it, keep on pressing your blank space button. You are using all skills all the time. It's so good. Now, usually we always use bleed types of debuff type RMB. This is because you need 8 stacks sword slash for this motion skill cooldown reduction to work with sword slash, and therefore you need sword secret menu, which allows you to +6 stacks when you use a motion skill. So you need this thing if you're using sword slash. Other than that, you don't need. If you use bleed, you don't need this. Now, of course, another thing which helps a lot, which is Sword Master, which have another 50% cooldown reduction in addition to the standard 25%, and which makes your motion skill cooldown modifier a lot. And this is actually pretty good for many other builds as well. And finally, Sword Divine Power gives you 80% damage reduction taken within 2 seconds after motion skill. Works pretty well with Tail Footwork, which gives you another 50%. And since you're using motion skill all the time, so you got a 90% damage reduction all the time as well. And notice that any, which means that you should not use sword motion skill because it is a continuous one. You cannot cancel it. Instead, fire motion to generate fairy flames, water motion to generate a phantom, or finger motion so that you can use it all the time are much better. And finally, just like the spear before, Skyfall Sword Ultimate will use every time you use motion skill to create sword shadow. But better than that, it will plus 1 second of invincibility for each sword shadow from motion skill, which means if you're using sword build correctly, you are using motion skill all the time, and during the entire 30 seconds cooldown or whatever of the Skyfall ultimate, you are invincible. It is that great. So for Fist, again, let's start from Fist LMB. It can either apply Brass Skin, the buff to yourself, which is basically a shield, or it can apply Bone Fracture debuff to the enemy so that enemy can be stunned. Both shield and stun are very, very powerful things in the entire game. So there are other ways to generate shield as well, including, so Brass Skin is the basic way, but also a shield guide, which is important in any build. Basically, every time you use a skill which costs MP, will generate shield. Or there is Tangya's talent. After you do a certain number of damage, it will generate a shield. Or you can use Warlord Phantom, which I do not recommend for new players, but which new player will look at this video anyway. So those ways are generate shield. And of course, if you have Fist Mastery, this can increase the shield max value of the Brass Skin that you use, because otherwise Brass Skin generated shield does have a max value. The other ones does not have, just to let you know. With the shield, you can use Heelbreaker Fist to detonate the shield and generate a huge amount of true damage. Huge amount. It one-shots everything, even in chaos, especially with a damage amplification like Fairy Flames. That's basically one of the most powerful builds, the best build in the entire game. Heelbreaker Fist with Fairy Flames. Or you can use other Fist RMB that detonate shield, just worse. And also, once you detonate shield, you can also trigger this Overlord Shield ultimate, which is one of the best ultimate in the entire game because it can stun enemy and also it protects yourself really well. Now, this is another way of stun enemy. Also, by the way, Heelbreaker Fist stun the enemy as well, and your Fist motion skill also stun the enemy. I just didn't say it here because they're not that important. The best part about stunning enemy, not only the enemy is controlled, but also you can raise the 51 power. This will increase your critical damage, which will make your critical damage to be 5 times damage rather than 1.2 times damage every time you trigger a crit, which is really, really good. And finally, if you're using a Bone Fracture build, then you should use Iron Body Fist, which allows you to hit the enemy when they are stunned and generate extra shield arrows, and they are really good. And at endgame with a transition set effect, which will make this Iron Body Fist even better. Whew. So now for Palm, that's again starting from Palm RMB. LMB is always starting like this. So you can either apply Internal Injury, which is a debuff so that enemy every time they receive damage, they will also take true damage. This is of course very powerful. Now, with this is the base of many true damage builds, so you can either or let's say give a damage amplifier like Fairy Flame or Lightning Bolt, and or with a high attack frequency like Supernova Sword or Verdant Quills, etc., so that you can always deal a lot of true damage to enemy. And this is including Fire Tornado build and the Fallen Leaves build. They are really powerful, very good. And most of the time when you see a Palm LMB, it is always this route. However, the true way of playing Palm is actually internal strength. And there are a few Palm RMBs which detonate internal strength. But the best one is Oceanic Palm. And Oceanic Palm is one of the things that can reach 0 CD RMB in a very early game, that's a middle game. It's because each time you detonate internal strength, it reduces the cooldown of your RMB, which is for itself very good. And also, Palm have this perfect charge mechanism, which allows you to have higher damage from your RMB, but also this can directly let you trigger internal res Palm ultimate, which is quite good. And now, internal strength, RMB, the ultimate, all of them allows you to generate Palm Wind below yourself. And Palm Wind can be damage amplified by Palm Mastery, 60%, which is good. And at end game, with Soaring Tide transition set, which will make your Palm Wind into a Super Palm Wind. And this is time when you become quite powerful, even just with a Palm Wind build rather than a true damage build. Alright, the last martial art, Finger. Again, it is a perfect example to show how bad if you do not understand how a build can be, and how good if you understand how a build works. So finger LMB, again, two types. You can either apply inner emptiness, which is a debuff to the enemy, and you can use the RMB to detonate the debuff. The best one is always Void Spirit Blast. So any RMB that detonates inner emptiness will make the enemy lose MP, and also your LMB will also make the enemy lose MP. So once the enemy loses MP, there are always sub-skills in your sutra to recover your HP, in your guide to recover your MP, but most importantly in finger divine power so that you can increase your attack. So finger can have extremely high attack, just making enemy lose MP by using the correct RMB and combination of debuff. But what makes this Void Spirit Blast the best RMB out of all three is because it can also stun the enemy. So this gives you high attack. This gives you super safe. This makes Mana Burn Finger one of the best builds and most underrated build in the entire game because most people do not understand how build works. And one more thing, if you make the enemy lose MP and if you're equipped with Spiritual Burst Finger ultimate, you can easily use this ultimate and deal a lot of true damage to the enemy. And then you will have another route, which is the buff route, Unsealed Meridians. They are pretty bad in early, middle, late game, but become pretty good in end game. So Spiritual Seal Blood is one of the RMBs that can reach 0 CD RMBs. So that's end game thing, as you know. But also there is Demon Seal Finger, which can make you easily use in end game. But main thing which makes it good in main game is the Arcane Portal set, which is not shown here, just because most of people don't really go to end game, and even Mana Burn Finger is still pretty good in end game. The thing is, this allows you to use the other ultimate, Divine Purse Finger, and this can also make enemy lose MP so that you can increase attack again. It's just this is a much more convoluted way compared to a standard Mana Burn Finger. Now let's go to the 6 spiritual roots. We're starting with fire. Again, it's quite easy to see Fairy Flame is the core of fire build. It's the best damage amplifier in the entire game. So actually, I have been making this mistake for the longest time, that I have been saying that Fairy Flames, each Fairy Flame will increase 80% of your damage. And I always thought this damage modifier is multiplication. You multiply 1.08 every time, for every Fairy Flame you generate. But that is not the truth. Apparently, how it works is if the damage modifier is the same type, means if you have a lot of Fairy Flames, you first add them first, and then multiply with damage modifier from the different type. So yeah, that was my mistake. And luckily enough, it does not make the final conclusion change. The final conclusion is Fairy Flame is the most powerful damage modifier in the entire game, and that still stands true. And yeah, because even you add 80% together, if you have 10 Fairy Flame, which is really easy to generate at middle game also, you got 80% of damage increase. That's almost doubled your damage, right? So another best thing about the Fairy Flames, as you can see, you can use Fire LMB to apply the buff or debuff, then detonate the buff debuff with Fire RMB to generate Fairy Flame. However, you can also simply use the Fire Motion skill, which itself have the sub-skill to increase the number of the Firefoxes in the motion skill. So that just use the motion skill, you automatically generate a few dozens or couples of Fairy Flames, which doubles or triples your damage already. And also it can be generated from Fire Phoenix ultimate. This is another reason makes this ultimate one of the best ultimate in the entire game. And yeah, so but to make Fairy Flame work, you need Fire Secret Menu, and that 80% damage amplification subskill from the secret menu to give the damage amplification. That's the most powerful, the core of fire build, and in fact the core of how to get high damage in this game. But also, fire RMB, they are continuous RMBs, so they can enter a weakened state once you increase duration, extend the duration. So if you want, you can use Fire Divine Power to increase duration time and also reduce the weakened state. Also, Fire Divine Power gives you the highest attack. And finally, Fire Phoenix Ultimate allows you to have 50% of damage reduction for the enemy where they are inside the Fire Flame, which is not shown here. Okay, now this one is, as you can see, it's one of the most complicated ones, but this is water build. So let's again start from water LMB. So you can either apply Frost debuff to the enemy or apply Energy Surge buff to yourself. So then you use RMB to detonate those buff debuffs. So the thing is, for Frost, the detonation will allow you to freeze the enemy. Of course, that is very powerful, just like stun enemy, which allows you to control the enemy so that they do not do damage to you, right? But also, apart from those Frost RMBs, even Frost Brand, which is actually technically an energy surge type of RMB, can also let you freeze the enemy, so which makes this thing really good. And the ICI Ultimate can also let you freeze the enemy. So that's just one thing here. Now, for the energy surge type, they can also make you for both Frost Brand and Icy Aura, and also including one of them in the Frost one, Vesseled Icicle, allows you to increase your MP. This is a pretty useful mechanism because water build, you don't have any MP problem, which is a bottleneck for many builds in middle game when you do not have the correct sub skills in your mind skills to recover MP yet. But water do not have this problem. And then if you have a lot of very high MP with the Linger, which is Artifact Spirit, her talent allows you to increase attack, and also Water Mastery allows you to increase your defense, which is not as important as this one. And that's all of this, right? Now, not all, most of the water RMBs have this charging mechanism, which means if you full charge them, they can be more powerful, but also they will generate an energy pond. The energy pond will increase your damage 50%, which is quite good already, but also with the water secret manual, they can increase another 30% damage when you stand inside energy pond. And also it allows you to charge shorter. So without energy pond, you charge 1.5 seconds. With energy pond, you charge 0.5 seconds. So quite good. But problem, you cost more MP. That sounds like a bad thing. However, first, with water divine power, the cost is less. And also, most importantly, your LMB now costs MP, but which means with a guy that generates shield, when you cost MP, you can now generate shield with LMB, which is always much shorter cooldown compared to any other skill, which means you are equipped with shield all the time, which is really great. And finally, at the end game, Icy Aura becomes much more powerful because Agile Dragon Transition Set allows it to have very short cooldown for Water Motion skill, and Water Motion will generate phantoms which can use Icy Aura as well. So this becomes a very nice circle, and also in general, Water Motion skill and the phantom are very good. Finally, back to this is time I say, what is my favorite build? Because everyone keep on asking the question, I always avoid to answer because I always think all the builds have their goodness and badness, but Lightning is my favorite build. And the reason for this is Lightning is very, very complete build, and it is good in many different ways. So let's start with how does Lightning work? Lightning LMB applies buff or debuff, and use Lightning RMBs. You can detonate buff and debuff. Also, all the Lightning RMBs allows you to generate a lightning bolt with a number of attacks you do to the enemy. So Lightning Mastery will reduce that threshold of number of attacks to trigger lightning bolt, and Supernova Sword, which allows you to easily trigger the lightning bolt because this grants you a lot of very high attack frequency. You can of course use many other ways for it, but the problem is because you need lightning RMB, so the best easy way just use Supernova Sword, and you can trigger lightning bolt really easily. And the lightning bolt, just like Fairy Flames, is the core of lightning build here. First of all, with lightning bolt you can trigger your ultimate. So it's very easy to trigger Thunder Retribution ultimate. You don't need combat expertise. And when the ultimate is O, it increases the number of attacks as well as the damage of lightning bolt. So that's just called increased power for lightning bolt, which makes your lightning bolt extremely powerful. But also, with a buff or debuff, with the lightning secret manual, you can also increase power of lightning bolt with the buff or debuff. And finally, Lightning Secret Manual, just like Fire Secret Manual, allows you to amplify your damage 0.018, so 1.8% each lightning bolt you trigger within 1 minute, which means you can forever stack it. And if you are building your lightning build correctly, you are so easy to trigger your lightning bolt so fast. Like within 1 minute, you will trigger much, like more than 100 lightning bolts. Again, this first add and then multiply with the other damage multiplier. So that means you got 1.8 times more, damage. Is that correct? 0.18 multiplied by 100. Yeah. So 1.8 times damage. That added, so it's 2.8 times damage. So lightning just become more and more powerful when the battle drags longer and longer. And in general, it's very complete, and I love it. Another thing why I like it is because you don't need to use lightning LMB, because you can apply the buff or debuff by using lightning motion skill, which means you can always use different LMBs. For example, we talked about internal injury palm for true damage. We talked about bone fracture fist to stun the enemy and also increase critical damage. And also, blade build to get you HP recovery, right? And that's how lightning build work. But also, once at end game, with the Thunder Attainment Transition set, you get 80% cooldown reduction during the ultimate for your motion skill. It just makes lightning extremely agile, extremely powerful. I love it. Now it comes to wind build. I think this is probably the first one you guys can see because I included this in my wind build guide, because that's the last build guide, of course. So just repeat everything again. Wind LMB itself, wind slice is really powerful. So try to make it fastest speed, 0.1 second of cooldown. And also you can apply the buff, spiritual wind to yourself, or apply the debuff, headwind to the enemy. So windbound, this skill is one of the most strongest RMB skill in the game to reduce the enemy's damage, because each time it hits the enemy, it reduces 15% of damage of the enemy, and it hits the enemy a lot of times, so the enemy damage will reduce to 1 or 0. And sweeping wind, it can reach 0 cooldown, so that's one thing. Now, continuous RMB is again a wind thing, and if you're using one of the 4 continuous RMBs, you can have 6 times dodge, and with wind divine power, you become 14 times plus 8. Now, with the continuous RMB, with sweeping wind, they can all generate something called whirlwind, and this whirlwind can also be generated from wind motion skill and wind ultimate. And it looks almost like whirlwind is the core of wind build, except it isn't. Well, it is still okay, because with the wind mastery to grant you the tracking, it can have very high attack frequency. So, which means it works really well if you have some way to true damage, for example, internal injury palm. And also, with Wind Secret Manual, each time you generate whirlwind, you got 25 damage reduction. So that's the problem. You to make you even more tankier instead of make your damage higher. If this is damage amplification, we will make whirlwind much better, just like lightning bolt and fairy flames, but it's not. So yeah, I mean, damage reduction is good, right? But you already have this, you have this, and wind motion skill make you invincible, so do you really need this? That's the question. And finally, there's a very special wind ultimate, give you a bullet time build. Oof, now we come to the final 2. Both are some kind of summon build. So Wood is a standard summon build. And let's start again. Wood LMB can either apply the Flower Spirit, or Flower Spirit. This is the buff to yourself, or apply Poisonous Throw, the debuff to the enemy. So the RMB here, there are quite a lot, right? There are 3 flower RMBs, which will give you flower summons. And also, then the Poison Plant RMB, which works with debuff, will give you mushroom summons. And the Poison Swamp will give you toad summons. So these 3 are the summons. Now, also, Flower Spirit itself allows you to summon the flowers as well. And also, Wood Motion Skill, if you use it with a certain stack of buff or debuff, it can summon either the flowers or the toads. I know it's complicated, but it's hard to make this thing work. But just notice that there are 2 arrows here. Anyways, so flower or the summons can be enhanced by Wood Mastery, 70% damage and 40% damage reduction to all the summons. So it's really, really important, Wood Mastery. And also, Meng Yi's talent will allow you to increase damage based on the number of summons. Again, very important. Meng Yi is one of the artifact spirits. Now, then we come to the ultimate and transition set. So Flower Queen ultimate as well as Bliss Butterfly transition set. These two will enhance the flower summons. And also Spirit Perfume transition set will enhance the mushroom summons. And finally, Dragon Flower ultimate will enhance both the mushroom and the toad summons. So Wood is also one of my favorite builds because it's very clear as well. You know that if you chose flower, you will have to use these two. If you choose mushroom or toad, you have to use these two. In general, use these two to enhance the summons. And there's one more thing. There's this special skill called Verdant Quills. It's coming from one of the 5 endings, which give you a special outfit and special skill. And this one can give very high attack frequency, which is a good true damage build combined with a true damage palm. And finally, the last of them, which is not the least, let's say in that way, which is Earth. So Earth build, you can apply the buff and debuff, and both of them can are good damage reduction. So which makes Earth NPCs really annoying to deal with because they are very hard to kill. And also, Seismic Wave, this RMB can grant you 40% of damage reduction to the enemy. So which means Earth, if you play it, focus on damage reduction, which can make you quite tanky, except it's not as tanky as Wind, but it is still quite good. Now, out of all the RMB, Seismic Wave, if you want to focus on damage reduction, Devouring Sand, again, one of the 5 outfit, so special one. So if you do not have the Earth outfit, which is from Phonici, I think, you will have Quicksand, which is much worse. So don't use that. But if you have that Devouring Sand, it's good. Now, Rock Formation is the highest damage RMB out of all the Earth RMBs. I think it's still higher than Devouring Sand, even with that. So yeah, Rock Formation pretty good. And also it can be enhanced by the 2 set of Mountain Might. Never go to 4 set. We'll talk about it why. Now, all of the Earth RMBs can summon an Earth Golem, which is quite good at low difficulties to attract enemy, but kind of useless at higher difficulties, especially come to late game. Early game still quite okay. Now, the only thing, so there are a few things, let's say. Earth Golem can be buffed by general buff summons, the enhanced, that's including Wood, Mastery, Mengyi, Talent, we talked about before. So use those two. Let me just show Wood, Mastery, Mengyi, Talent. Yeah, use those two if you want to focus on summons. But also, Spirit Giant is one of your ultimate. So Earth Summon Die triggers your ultimate so that you can use your ultimate. And this will summon Spirit Giant, which is quite important for Earth in normal middle to late game because it can help you to stun the enemy. And yeah, you need that stun to keep yourself safe. And also you have damage reduction, right? So you are safe. Now, how do you increase your damage? At endgame, focusing on Earthcracker transition set, the 4th set, will allows you to summon Super Earth Golem that will greatly enhance. This is the first time and only time in the entire series I talk about greatly enhance. Definitely focus on this because that will make your Super Earth Golem extremely powerful. And at that stage, you don't even need the Spirit Giant to stun enemy anymore. And that's another reason why you don't want a 4 set of Mountain Might because that will detonate Earth Golem. So don't use that. 2 set is enough. And yeah, so Earth build, let's say normally you were focusing just play it as a normal build. You can focus on damage reduction or focus on your LMB. One of them have quite high damage. And Earth Golem just use it to attract enemy attention, that's it. But at end game, use Earthcracker set to greatly enhance it. So that would be everything about all the 12 martial arts build rules. Now, before we end, I also want to quickly go through a question like how do you mix up builds? So again, you can just go through all these ones and think about what is the key thing to make a build work. For example, a good thing here, let's see, Finger. It needs Finger Divine Power, right? Which means it does not need Finger Secret Manual or Finger Mastery. So which means now you can use a Fire Secret Manual and Fairy Flame because it can be generated by Fire Motion skill. Now if you look at the Finger, do you need a motion skill? Nowhere talks about it. So in that means that you can use standard Finger LMB, RMB, stun enemy, and also Finger Divine Power to increase your own attack. So the whole set works here already. Now you can just add in Fairy Flame with Fire Motion skill, Fire Secret Manual, even Fire Ultimate, so that you get damage amplification. and you don't need to use fire, LMB, RMB. So this is a perfect example of how you can mix two build different elements together. And also that is why, another reason why Fairy Flame is so good as a damage amplifier, because you don't need LMB and RMB to generate it. You can generate it simply by Fire Motion skill, Fire Phoenix Ultimate, or, it's not and, it's but or. And also, it only need to work with one minor skill, that is Fire Sacred Manual. It's very easy to make it work, and it's very powerful. On the opposite side, Lightning. In order to make Lightning Bolt, which is also a good damage amplifier, in order to make it work, you need Lightning RMB, and that already limits a lot of different builds. Because as you can see, most of the builds you need LMB and RMB to work together. That's kind of the basic thing. So with Lightning, it just feels like I need all of this to make it work. But not only RMB, you also need both Lightning Mastery and Lightning Secret Manual, which means the only thing left is just Divine Power. So that is another reason why Lightning works well with 5th Divine Power. So now the thing is, if I want to use Lightning Bolt damage amplification, I want to mix Lightning with a different LMB, because as I mentioned, I can use Lightning Motion skill to apply buff debuff. I can use different LMB, which is always good to have Palm Internal Injury, True Damage. Again, why Palm works well with Lightning, because you only need Palm LMB here to make this work, and you need Damage Amplifier and High Attack Frequency. Guess what? Lightning have Damage Amplifier, and Supernova High Attack Frequency makes Lightning better. So that's why they work, and it doesn't need Lightning LMB. So that's what makes it working together. Except that makes you feel like I'm playing a Lightning build, because everything's about Lightning. But Fire is different, because you only need Fairy Flame, Motion skill. So when you use Combine Finger with Fire, you're still playing a Finger build with Finger LMB, RMB, right? So that's basically how you combine and how you mix different elements. So if you have interest, take a look at this video and try to check out by yourself what are the essential elements to make one build work, what's the essential element to make other build work, and how can you combine them together. Alright, that will be everything. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.